Hey guys, it's Barack Lesnar of Barack Lesnar Hoops. And this next video, we've already made one of the sleepers, the guys that are diamonds in the rough, the guys you should be targeting, the guys that are being undervalued. Now this video is the exact opposite. This video are the players that I feel you should not be drafting at their current draft position, or maybe at all, unless they drop significantly from where they're going. Let's start right here. The first player that I wanted to list, and it saddens me so much because just on the surface, he is one of the most complete fantasy basketball players and most complete regular basketball players on planet Earth. He is a beast of a player. The problem is, with his knee tendonitis issues, it appears that he will be on a load management schedule that will prohibit him from playing back-to-back games. That appears to be the case. So now keep in mind, even though it is a shortened season, it looks like it'll be 72 games. The problem here is there will probably be a lot more back-to-backs because of the shortened season, which means more opportunities for Kawhi Leonard not to play. He's going right now at an average pick of 12, which almost close to 13, which isn't awful. You might even get fair value there, but it's just a headache. It's not that he's not a good player, but availability is the best ability, and with him sitting out so many games, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, I can't in good conscience tell you to draft him. Very similar situation with Kevin Durant, who's going around the same average pick. He may have to be on here as well because it's just a big unknown. And sometimes with big unknowns, you don't want your very first pick to be that huge of an unknown. The upside is there, but the downside risk is huge. Before that, I didn't see too many guys, honestly, that I would tell you not to draft. They seem fairly ranked for where they're going. No one really stood out until Lauri Markkanen. And then there's some guys later on that we can discuss. But Lauri Markkanen, average pick of 79. Yahoo actually projects him higher than he's going. So I may be wrong on this, but I really feel that he regressed. And I'm iffy. I mean, he gets you the really nice three-pointers. He's a big man that gets you good free throw percentage. The field goal percentage is bad, but the free throw percentage is nice. Don't like the steals and blocks numbers. Almost 2 turnovers per game. Barely any assists. It's hard to say that he can't have a great season. I tell you guys to draft Davis Bertans. Lauri Markkanen can be that type of player. But I didn't like what I saw last year. I feel that the Bulls just have other mouths that they rather feed. And with his skill set being mostly scoring, I can see him kind of having a drop-off like Dario Saric had. That's what I'm seeing for him. I could be wrong. He's probably a bigger unknown than a lot of the guys here because he can have a great season. He's still very young. There's nothing stopping him from taking the leap, getting those three-pointers closer to 3, getting that efficiency up, maybe even getting some of those blocks up and being a very effective player. Another guy I tend to avoid in drafts, this one's going to be unpopular because he's a very popular player, but Jaylen Brown. I'm not a fan of his fantasy basketball game. He has improved significantly. 2.3 three-pointers made with 48% field goal. That's really good. What I don't like from him is the really just putrid free throw percentage. I feel that there's just other mouths that are going to be fed more than Jaylen Brown. He surprised me a bit last year. I'm not going to lie. I believe I had him on my do not draft list last year. He ended up outproducing my prediction for me. He might do that again. Personally speaking, I just don't like guards. I save my low free throw percentage almost exclusively for my big men to get me blocks. And if I'm going to hurt my free throw percentage, I don't want to do it on a guy that's only going to get me 0.4 blocks per game, because I feel that everything else on this list I can get elsewhere. I can draft Lou Williams close to 80 picks from now and get similar points per game, get more assists per game, get close to the same three-pointers, and maybe my field goal percentage will be lower, but it'll help my free throw percentage a lot more. Just not a big fan of Jaylen Brown. as far as a fantasy basketball player. Kevin Love, a guy who used to be a stud in the past, but his health is just much too unreliable right now. He's on a Cavaliers team that doesn't have a very bright future, and if anything, is rebuilding. And he's a veteran with a large contract. That just does not bode well for his playing time late in the season. That means a lot of rest days. I haven't talked about this so much, but you really need to start thinking about that part of the year when you're drafting. Kevin Love may be great for you if he's healthy for the first few months. And maybe at that point you could trade him for value. But if you hold on to him the whole season, chances are he won't be playing when you need him most for the fantasy playoffs, because normally the fantasy playoffs coincide with what we call funny season. Funny season is when teams that are slotted into high playoff seeds are resting their veterans for the playoffs, and the really bad teams have their players resting because they're trying to get more lottery balls and higher draft picks. Kevin Love would fall in the latter half as being on the lottery team as a veteran. He could miss a lot of games and just really not be worth the headache because he has huge injury concerns as is. A very popular player last year and most improved player candidate was Devontae Graham. He came out of nowhere and had a really nice season. Gave you over 18 points, over 7 assists, over 3 3-pointers. His field goal percentage was putrid, but honestly 2.9 turnovers to 7.5 assists and almost 4 3-pointers per game. How can you be mad at that? I don't see him having the same level of opportunities this year, and I also think there's a possibility he may have overperformed. He's not going to have the ball in his hands as much. They just took on LaMelo Ball. They've also taken on Gordon Hayward, who are two players that are going to have heavy usage. So where does Devontae Graham's usage come from? He's going to be affected. So when you're talking about an average pick of 83, that is way too much uncertainty for what really comes off as a bit of a fluky season. The field goal percentage is already abysmal. So if I'm drafting around that range, there's just other players I'd rather have than Devontae Graham. If he falls to me around 100, then maybe we could start talking. But unless that happens, I won't have him on too many of my teams. Someone else that's being drafted in the top 28 and should definitely not be drafted by you is Mr. Kemba Walker. A stud fantasy basketball player, but with his knee issues, he may not be playing until January. This is very concerning. He's a small player. A lot of his games based on his athleticism and quickness, and having a knee injury when he's that little of a guy. No offense to him. He could have a sudden drop off, and you may be dealing with headaches of him sitting games or just missing long stretches of time, and this being a reoccurring injury. If you have him in a dynasty league, I would consider moving on and not having him as a keeper. I just don't see these sort of issues improving with a player of his size and age. I won't be drafting Kemba Walker in many leagues at an average pick of 27.6. Yahoo has him projected to be number 88. Not a fan of that. Won't be drafting him. One player I had it on my do not draft list last year, and I feel vindicated for doing that, was Draymond Green. Once one of my favorite fantasy basketball players. His production just hurts you more than it helps you, which did not used to be the case. He's barely scoring for you. The rebounds and assists are nice, but barely getting you threes. The 1.4 steals is a far cry from the close to 2 he was able to get you in the past. Under 1 block per game. Really high turnovers for a big man. The field goal percentage is putrid, and while the free throw percentage isn't awful for a big man, it's just average. So at this point, he's being drafted at 51.4. I just don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see myself picking him there. There's players with much higher upside I'd rather take a chance on, like Christian Wood, than take Draymond around pick 51. If you manage to get him around 90, as he's projected, that's a different story. He may still have some value, especially if you're punching certain categories, but he won't be on my team. I was iffy about having my man's Al Horford, Dominican superstar, on this list because on an Oklahoma City Thunder that just got rid of Steven Adams and Danilo Gallinari, the usage and minutes are going to be there. He's probably the second best player on the Oklahoma City Thunder now. So on one end, for a guy being picked at 97.6, he does have the potential to outplay where he's being picked at. Now, just like I told you about Kevin Love, though, on an Oklahoma City Thunder team that's clearly tanking, Al Horford is very unlikely to be playing towards the end of the season. I know a lot of people would think that's worth the gamble. And it may be, because he may be very productive for you right up until you need him most. And I'm telling you, there's nothing that sucks more than going into the fantasy playoffs and suddenly your studs that got you there are sitting out for no good reason other than their team's position. The best players to have are teams on seeds that are fighting for the playoffs, because if you're fighting for the playoffs, you are not going to sit your best players. You're going to play them. What incentive would Oklahoma City have to play Al Horford if they feel he'll help them win and they're trying to lose? That is why I have him on my do not draft list. Just keep that in mind. DeAndre Jordan, his average pick of 138.6, and he's projected at 99. So he's another one very similarly to Al Horford, who, despite being up there in age, might get opportunities to produce. But he's honestly just fallen off significantly. He used to be a guy that got you 13 points, 13 rebounds. Those numbers have been creeping down. He's in a timeshare with Jared Allen, who's the younger player. His free throw percentage has improved significantly. His field goal percentage is always high. But just very similarly to someone like Tristan Thompson, he's a two-category guy that doesn't really help you anywhere else. And with that timeshare, I guess if you're at an average pick of 138, he's not the worst big man you can pick if it's a desperation pickup. But around that range, I would prefer to take a chance on someone like Nerlens Noel, who really gives me high upside on my steals and blocks, which are two categories I really value. Harrison Barnes is another guy that's projected to go higher than his average pick, so maybe it's not fair to have him on this list. But I'm just not a fan of guys that he gives you barely any three-pointers, barely any steals, barely any blocks. The turnovers are pretty low and the percentages aren't bad, but he's just really a one-trick pony. He's still young and he may progress to a point where he's a more usable fantasy player, but they do have more pieces now in Sacramento. I just don't see it for him. He's never been a great fantasy basketball player, and I don't see it now. At this range, I just feel there's other guys that you should be focusing on rather than Harrison Barnes. Harrison Barnes fits best, I guess, if you're really trying to get your scoring up. And just out of desperation, you think he may have more usage, maybe because someone like Bogdan Bogdanovic is gone. I don't see it, so I won't be taking a chance on him, but maybe you can. Andrew Wiggins, I asked you before if I should have him on my sleepers list, and he may still be a sleeper, but honestly, just experience has shown me that Andrew Wiggins as a fantasy basketball player just tends to hurt you more than he helps you. Andrew Wiggins, he hurts your percentages. While he's a better three-pointer steals blocks guy, is a better assist guy than he's been in the past. It's yet to be seen how he does on a Warriors team that has Steph Curry playing healthy and Klay Thompson injured. It's hard for me to say. But with that much uncertainty, there's other players that I want to pick around 76, 77. I just know there is. There's a lot of players around that range I just believe have more secure production or safer picks. Even though Andrew Wiggins may have slightly higher upside, I don't think it's sufficient for me to pick him where he's being drafted, especially when Yahoo has him projected at 134 and he's going at an average pick of 76.3. Tread carefully. Mike Conley's another player that people are kind of going off of name value at this point. He's being drafted at 78.8. He's projected at 142. He's projected at really low field goal percentage. A guy that you used to count on for his high steals is barely getting you one now. His assists are low. The points are decent, but just compared to what he's doing in your other categories at 78.8, and the injury concerns he had last year, and just the fact they have Jordan Clarkson off the bench, a much younger player. They play with Donovan Mitchell, who's going to be a usage monster in my opinion. They also have guys like Joe Ingles and Bojan who need the ball as well. I don't like the idea of picking Mike Conley at 78.8, and I won't be doing it. So Marvin Bagley has an average pick of 111, 100% drafted. He's projected by Yahoo to be 146. And man, just another guy on the Kings like Harrison Barnes that I'm just not very excited about. The 3-pointers are really low. The steals are low. That right there, we're already off to a terrible start. When you're not helping me in 3 steals or blocks, those are just players I tend to not be a fan of. You gotta help me in at least one of them to some high degree. Players that tend to hurt me in all 3, they don't fit very well with the strategies that I like to implement. They have to help me in at least one of those. And not only that, while his upside is there, he's been so injury prone. He's one of the most injury prone players, young players I've seen. It feels like every time he comes back, he plays a week and a half and gets injured again. I don't want that headache. Chances are you may get a chance to pick him up off the waiver wire some point later this season if you really believe in him. But at an average pick of 111, there's a lot of other players I'd rather pick around that area. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope projected to be 151, going at an average pick of 115. This guy's not a great fantasy player. He's very streaky. He's gone on streaks where he looks great, but for the most part, he doesn't produce enough for you. He's not going to get a ton of opportunities playing with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, now Dennis Schrader, Montrezl Harrell. Those are all guys who are going to have preferential treatment when it comes to being part of that rotation. I just don't see it. I'm not wasting a top 115 pick on Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. That's the range you're getting guys like Miles Bridges with huge upside and potentially starting, and would definitely be higher on the pecking order than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He's only 4% drafted, but these Lakers fans seem to pick him around 115. Most people aren't drafting him, and I don't believe you should draft him either. Goran Dragic, if you go and see my very first mock draft this year, I think I may have let just his play in the bubble get to me because he did look great in the bubble. But he also got injured in the bubble. It did hurt the Heat. But again, he's injury prone at this point in his career. He's a year older, and he's not a guy that gets you steals or blocks. You're probably better off, instead of picking him here, you're better off waiting a little more and picking somebody like Jordan Clarkson, who I mentioned before. You may not get the same level of assists, but you're going to get a lot of the same other stuff, and you may be able to get Jordan Clarkson later than you're getting Goran Dragic, who's projected to be 164 at an average pick of 127. I picked him in that first draft, and I think in the same video I said I regretted it. So unless you're desperate for a point guard, or if he drops significantly and you're in a deeper format and you just want to bank on the fact that sometimes he can drop 25 points per game, consecutive games, that he's that level of talent. Otherwise, I prefer somebody like Lou Williams, who I believe is just slightly more reliable than what you're going to get from Goran Dragic at this point in his career. Victor Oladipo with an average pick of 76.1, projected by Yahoo to finish at 174. Again, he's coming off of an injury. We're really banking off of with Victor Oladipo. He's always been a decent fantasy basketball player, but that was when he was healthy. And we just don't know if he's the same player that he used to be. And also, it's unknown how long he's going to be in Indiana. There were serious talks of him going to Boston when Gordon Hayward was trying to sign with the Pacers. So that's another big iffy question mark. There's the injury concern question mark. At an average pick of 76, there's much better options around that range that I'd rather go for someone like Eric Bledsoe, who does deal with some injury concerns, but nothing as serious as what Victor Oladipo dealt with. While Victor Oladipo might have better upside, I think you're just taking the safer player with someone like Eric Bledsoe, who's also going to give you a lot of these similar things you're getting from Victor Oladipo, like the three-pointers made, the steals, similar points per game, maybe even more assists. So if I can pick Eric Gordon, I'm definitely not taking a chance at Victor Oladipo at an average pick of 76. Eric Gordon's going at 151, and he's projected by Yahoo to finish at 184. He's 39% drafted. He has been a usable fantasy player in the past, but that was in the past. He's like a crappy version of Jordan Clarkson, honestly, because The field goal percentage is putrid. The free throw percentage is pretty bad for a guard that shoots that many threes. No steals, no blocks you're going to get from this guy. Not a fan. There's going to be maybe some opportunities for usage there for him, but his decline has been so drastic, I just don't see it. And he's already been a player who's dealt with injury concerns a large part of his career. He was looking really nice there for a year or two, but now I don't think you want to draft him if at all possible. Someone you may be lured into taking a chance on is RJ Barrett. He's 100% drafted, average pick of 125, and let's give him some credit that he's a young player and he could have a bounce back season. I felt similarly down on someone like Brandon Ingram just last season, and he had an amazing season, and I was wrong to judge him the way that I did. But the thing with RJ Barrett is we don't know that he has that upside. We don't know that he's Brandon Ingram. I don't want to take a chance on it. There's safer players that I can pick around that range. The three-pointers made for him last year were The field goal percentage and the free throw percentage were horrid. He just only really helped you with the 14 points per game. That's about it. He could improve, but I would need to see just a long streak of games, him playing at a different level for me to feel comfortable having him on my team. Even at a pick of 124, I feel there's better options around that range. Kyle Kuzma, similar situation, just not a fan of his game. Doesn't help me with the percentages, steals, or blocks. The three-pointers made. He's just a very one-dimensional player. And like I said with other Lakers, I don't see him having the opportunity to be a helpful fantasy basketball player. He's going at 138. Even at 138, there's other players I'd rather have. I'll watch him from the waiver wire just in case for some reason he ends up being like a third option. I just don't see it. I don't think he's that good of a player. Tristan Thompson is, just like Wiggins, may have been on my potential sleeper list. But I also wanted to put him potentially on my do not draft list. Average pick of 129. He's projected to finish 212th. He can get you points, he can get you rebounds, and on a Boston Celtics team with a lot of offensive talent, he won't be expected to do much heavy lifting on the offensive end other than getting rebounds and scoring putbacks, which he can do well. But no three-pointers, no steals, 0.9 blocks for a center, really bad free throw percentage and almost 2 turnovers. He's just another one of those players that really hurts you strongly in more areas than he's helping you strongly. At an average pick of 129, unless you're desperate for rebounding or desperate to really pad your field goal percentage in like a punt free throw build, Tristan Thompson, no thanks. Blake Griffin. Every year, I see people ignore the reality of Blake Griffin's career. Every single year, someone takes him in the top 50 thinking they're going to get the old Clippers Blake Griffin. But guess what? Even old Clippers Blake Griffin was injured constantly. Is he a good fantasy basketball player when healthy? Yes. Was he last year? No. Just look at those percentages. That is not a good sign. The moment a player starts dropping off to that degree, yes, he was dealing with injuries, but again, he's been dealing with injuries his whole career. And now he is not on the right side of his career as far as age. His knees are shot at this point. His game is heavily, I don't want to say he's very skilled, but his game is heavily based on his athleticism and his high level of skill. He still has a lot of skill. But for an average pick of 82.8, he's being projected to finish at 221. You're picking Blake Griffin counting on him being healthy. If you can get him really late as a gamble, sure. But at an average pick of 82.8, you could probably get someone like Thomas Bryant there, and I'd much rather take a shot on Thomas Bryant than at Blake Griffin because he's another player that's not going to help me with my steals or blocks. He's tanking my field goal percentage, and I can get guys that give me similar production in those other areas without having to pick them at an average pick of 83. Do not draft Blake Griffin. Do not count on Blake Griffin being healthy. It's probably not going to be happening. You're absurd if you think it is. Caris LeVert is a high upside, very talented player. But the reason I have him as a do not draft player is quite simple. Again, hurts the percentages. Close to 3 turnovers per game. Helps me in the other areas, but just right there for a guy, he's not getting a ton of steals. And one of the other issues is there's a lot of mouths to feed, a lot of heavy usage guys. Even off the bench, you have Spencer Dinwiddie, who's going to need a lot of touches. So where's Caris LeVert sliding in and being at his most effective? Joe Harris, I feel, is a much better fit to get fantasy production just because he doesn't need the ball to be effective. Caris LeVert is one of those players who just is more effective when he has the ball in his hands. But who are you going to take the ball away from? Kyrie? Kevin Durant? Spencer Dinwiddie, again, is going to need his shots. At an average pick of 83.4 and somebody that's just hurt my percentages like this just last season, I don't want to take a gamble there. If he were after pick 100, I'd be a little more comfortable. But Caris LeVert, I can't pick him there. LaMelo Ball. I think the kid's a bit overhyped. I may be wrong about him, but with no preseason or no summer league where we get to see these guys, there is preseason that's going to happen, but with no summer league where we can kind of see how these players play against higher level competition and mesh with their teammates, etc., we haven't been able to see that. So we're going off of his name and what he's done in the past. He was drafted very high. You'll have an opportunity to play. But that Hornets team has some, as I mentioned before, they have Terry Rozier. They have Gordon Hayward. They have players that are going to have the ball in their hands. I think his efficiency is going to be down. His defense is going to be really bad. I think he's going to have a lot of turnovers. I just don't foresee him being worth picking at a pick of 102 when there's safer options. I'm not picking any rookie so far this year, and I don't think that you should either. At least for now, until we see more. Carmelo Anthony's going at an average pick of 124.6. He's only 9% drafted, but with Robert Covington now with the Blazers, Derrick Jones Jr. now with the Blazers, and them starting, you have Carmelo off the bench. There's just I'd say at least 4 scoring options that are going to come before Carmelo Anthony. So where is he really helping you? I don't think you're going to see that level of scoring anymore. I don't think you're going to see any steals or blocks. You're going to get your field goal percentage hurt. His free throw percentage was decent. He just does not do enough. He's like a Harrison Barnes type. I'd rather avoid him. Rajon Rondo may be overhyped only because the Lakers won a championship, but he's just not a great fantasy basketball player. He's playing behind Trae Young, it seems like. Chris Dunn's there as well. There's some other players that are just going to have the ball in their hands more. I don't see where he fits in. It seems like an odd fit with that Hawks team. I wouldn't be drafting him at all. He's only been drafted 3% of leagues. But even if you're desperate for something like assists, at this point in his career, just take a shot at somebody else that isn't Rondo. Now, these are some players I didn't include in the beginning, but I was iffy about, so I'm going to talk about them here. Now, I will say that when Kyrie Irving is healthy, he puts up some of the best production of any point guard in the NBA, of almost any player in the. He's a monster. These were his averages last year, and they're beautiful averages, almost 48% field goal, 92% free throws, so he barely misses his free throws. He got you a half a block a game for a guy that gets crapped on for not getting you playing defense. He got almost 1.5 steals per game, almost 3-pointers per game. I mean, almost 28 points per game. The guy had a great season on paper. The problem is, the last few seasons, it seems his teams perform better when he's injured, and he's also injured often. He dealt with a serious knee injury, but he also dealt with a very serious shoulder injury that kept him out the majority of the season. Between his legs and now his shoulder, it's like Kyrie's body's breaking down, and he's not getting any younger. He's only getting more mileage. I just predict him that he's going to miss a lot of games. He's missed over 20% of the games that he's played, I believe. Over 20% of the games in his career, and which is just an insane amount. He's going at an average pick of 25. If you get a healthy Kyrie, he'll be worth a top 10 pick, honestly. But the chances of getting a healthy Kyrie, it just seems very unlikely. Speaking of which, Gordon Hayward, while he did have a strong season, this is not the same team he's leaving. He was on the team where Jason Tatum was, drawing defensive attention. Jaylen Brown was drawing defensive attention. Kemba Walker was drawing defensive attention. Gordon Hayward was potentially their fourth or fifth option. Now he's going to a Hornets team that's going to expect him to be their go-to player, and we don't know that he has the ability to do that because he does not have the same roster around him. He's on the wrong side of 30. He just got a huge contract, so there's very huge expectations for him. Yahoo actually has him projected to finish in the top 30. He's going at an average pick of 68. So is the upside there? Yeah. If you get Utah Jazz Gordon Hayward, I'd say he's definitely worth a pick there. But we haven't seen Utah Jazz Gordon Hayward since he left the Utah Jazz. And banking on him suddenly being that player when we haven't seen that, you're taking a very big gamble with a pick at 67 when there's just safer options. Kristaps Porzingis with an average pick of 38.5. He is injured to start the season, and as far as we know, he may not be back until at least January. What is good about Porzingis? 2.5 3-pointers made and 2 blocks per game. He's like a rich man's Brook Lopez as far as what you get. What's wrong with him? Well, he's injured all the time. He tore his ACL 2 or 3 years ago. He missed a large part of the season last year with leg problems. He's already missing the start of this season. He's very young, and those 7-footers, as they age, his body might not be able to sustain all the pressure of being an NBA player. It's a huge gamble. You might have him on the IR a lot. He's one of those guys, when he plays for you 2 or 3 weeks, you're happy, but then he may be down again. Someone like a Kyrie Irving with an average pick of 38.5. There's just other big men in that range I'd much rather take a chance on. Someone like Joseph Nurkic. If he's available around then, I would definitely pick him before I pick Kristaps Porzingis. When he's healthy, like I told you, he helps you out a whole lot. It's not that he's not a good fantasy basketball player. His health is just unreliable. Russell Westbrook. At an average pick of 22.8, he is projected to finish at 73 for the Washington Wizards. Now, I will say that there's a very big possibility. There's a very, very big possibility that he has a great season. By Russell Westbrook standards, if these are last year's numbers, he actually had a very strong season. The 3-pointers made were low, but he really improved on his field goal percentage. His free throw percentage is slightly above average and not as bad as it was the previous season. Still not great for as many free throws as he gets. But that's the problem with Westbrook. He tends to hurt your percentages, even though, again, his field goal percentage last year was pretty decent. But this year, he's playing on a different team where he may get higher usage than he had last year. And as good as Bradley Beal is, and he's a monster, he's not as good as James Harden. At an average pick of 22.8, I would not be comfortable taking Russell Westbrook there, and you won't see me drafting him there. I'd rather take a chance on someone like Donovan Mitchell or a younger player that doesn't have the same kind of injury concerns or efficiency concerns. We saw in the bubble, despite him really improving his field goal percentage around December and January in the bubble, we kind of saw the old Russell Westbrook. I don't know which Russell Westbrook the Washington Wizards will get, but I won't be seeing it from I'll see him on your team and you let me know. If he falls to the 35-40 range, then I think his upside, it might make it worth a pick there, but at 22.8, I'm not doing it. Last but not least, Aaron Gordon's projected to finish at 97 and at an average pick at 79.5. He's another player with low 3-pointers made, low steals, low blocks, low field goal percentage, low free throw percentage. He's hurting me in so many different categories, and the good category for him is none really. I guess 7.7 rebounds, just a very boring player. Has never been the fantasy player that every year I thought he could be with his level of athleticism. The best he's ever been at was in that Uncle Drew movie. That's the best Aaron Gordon we've ever seen on a basketball court, but we haven't seen it on an actual real life NBA court. He's still young, the potential's still there, but at an average pick of 80, I'm not taking him there. He's broken my heart in the past. I know he's broken your heart too. I would pass on Aaron Gordon. All right, guys, that is my do not draft list for right now. Anything lower than that, your draft is so deep that it's all really a shot in the dark at that point. I think this is a pretty comprehensive list. I gave my best reasoning possible. Tell me, what players did I miss that you think shouldn't be drafted that I didn't mention? Or are there players that I mentioned as do not draft players that you just disagree 100% with? Let me know below. Would love to know. I'm genuinely curious. It would help me out a lot to fine-tune my drafting strategies. If you do agree with the players on the list, tell me which ones you agree with the most. Thank you for being part of this community. If you haven't already, smash that like button for me. Turn it blue so it has that thumbs up. If it's not blue, you're doing it wrong. And I don't want you to do it wrong. I want you to subscribe. I made it easy for you. It even says, if you know how to read, bottom right-hand corner, subscribe, Brock Lesnar Hoops. And I'm going to tell you something. I feel like in the past, I've been shy a little bit in thinking, man, that lockdown, what is it called? The Lockdown Podcast, Josh Lloyd, he must be better than me because he gets more views than me. Or that guy must be better because he gets more views than me. But you know what? I don't think they're giving you better fantasy advice than I'm giving you. And I would happily play any of them and wipe the floor with them. I'm that confident in my ability to do that. Do you think I'm wrong? Comment below and let me know. I think I can do it. And you know what? If you follow these videos, I think you can do it too. Because us so-called experts, we're wrong all the time. And you probably make calls that are considered dumb. And you're like, man, I just see this happening. And then that's exactly what happens. Give yourself that credit. Get that confidence in yourself. I'm just a guy with a laptop and a YouTube channel. I try to prove that my stuff works. That's my biggest validation, the stuff working for you. But don't take me as an authority just because I say I am. Apply some of this stuff, and if it works for you, then you know that I am. But apply that to anybody else. And if any of them hear this, and they have a league that they would like me in, and they feel very confident in their ability, and they like all their views, and they think they have people hyping them up in their ego that they're the best, I would love to prove them wrong. You know how to reach me, comment below. I know you know about me. Alright guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Be on the lookout for more mock draft videos and more strategy videos. If there's any specific strategy videos you have in mind that I can help you with, please let me know below. As always, much love to you, my Brock Lesnar Hoops community. Take care.